He was just an ordinary dog, but that night, Max was to change the lives of the Thompson family and everyone who knew him forever. It had been a quiet evening at the Thompson household. Jack Thompson was hanging out with his wife in the living room. The space was warm as they watched their daughter, Emily, playing with Max, their loyal 3-year-old German Shepherd. Max wasn't just any other pet. He was family. Loyal a Zeve, especialito Emily, sat close to her, watching every move, almost saying at every chance, ready to protect her from everything. Ominous warning, little did the family know that this was going to be anything but a usual evening. The quiet evening suddenly took a turn when Max suddenly sat up. His body went taut as he raised his nose, sniffing the air. An unusual smell of the faint trace of smoke wafted through the house, unnoticed by everyone but Max. His instincts kicked in immediately. The once relaxed dog began pacing up and down, his paws nervously clicking on the hardwood floor. He looked up at Jack with urgency in an effort to convey something no one else could feel. His eyes were intense, resolute, and filled with an unusual focus. Out of character for Jack, Max acted out of character and frowned. Before he could write it off, Max darted for the stairs, looking back as if to beg Jack to follow. Perplexed but trusting his loyal companion, Jack rose from his seat and followed Max, feeling a slight unease build up inside him as they moved toward the upper floor. The faint scent of smoke was more pronounced. Jack's heart quickened as he began to feel that something was very wrong. At the top of the stairs, Max stopped outside of Emily's room, barking softly but persistently. Jack's heart sank as he opened the door and saw the source of the smoke. The small, flickering flames spreading along the curtains near Emily's bed. The fire was still contained, but the threat was immediate and terrifying. Jack's mind was racing, trying to process what he was seeing, feeling the urgency to protect his daughter above all else. He reached for Emily's treasured stuffed animal, a small gesture to keep her calm amid the chaos. The flames grew, and with them the panic in Jack's chest. He clutched Emily, close, his mind swimming with terror as he turned to see Max standing in the doorway, eyes fixed on the danger, ready to act. It was then that Jack realized they were in a race against time and that Max would be their guardian to see them through it. Max went from anxious to determined in 1 second. He looked intently at the growing flames, his eyes seemingly calculating what his next step was. His protective instinct was honed and propelled him into action. He seemed to know intuitively the gravity of the situation, the danger his family was in, especially his nearest and dearest Emily. Companion Max took one last look at Jack and at Emily. With a deep, resolute breath, he took off running toward the flames. He vanished into the thickening smoke that was now filling the room. Jack cried out as Max's figure was lost to the haze. The heat was stifling by now, and the smoke was searing his eyes, but all Jack could focus on was his brave dog plunging into the fire without a moment's hesitation. It felt like an eternity. Max's bravery left Jack breathless, torn between trying to save him and keeping Emily safe. Emily clutched her father's shirt wide-eyed and frightened, unable to comprehend the full danger of the situation. But sensing the gravity of what was happening, Jack held her close, whispering reassurances that everything would be all right, though a heavy doubt weighed on his heart. In those excruciating moments, he couldn't help but feel a helpless gratitude for Max, who had placed himself directly in harm's way for their safety. The fire crackled and hissed as it devoured more of the room, casting flickering shadows and filling the air with the acrid smell of burning. Jack's mind raced with questions, each one filled with dread. Would Max make it out? What drove him to such bravery? Just as Jack's hope began to waver, he heard a distant faint barking. His heart skipped a beat, the sound rekindling a glimmer of hope that perhaps against all odds Max was still fighting to find his way back outside. Flashing lights filled the street as the fire trucks arrived, their sirens piercing the night. Firefighters jumped out, gearing up quickly and assessing the growing fire that was consuming part of the Thompson home. Jack, clutching Emily tightly, hurried outside, relief mixing with desperation as he pointed frantically to the upstairs window, explaining through choked breaths that his dog, Max, was still inside. The firefighters nodded with grave expressions, understanding the urgency and the emotional weight behind Jack's words. The firefighters rushed toward the house, hoses ready, as others prepared to enter the smoke-filled rooms. Jack watched helplessly, his heart pounding. As he held Emily close, his mind flashed between memories of Max as a playful, joyful companion and the terrifying image of him lost somewhere in the thick, consuming smoke. Emily, too, sensed the weight of the moment, her small face buried in her father's chest, whispering quietly, "Will Max be okay, Daddy?" Jack didn't know how to answer. All he could do was hold her tighter, his mind pleading silently that Max would somehow find his way back to them. Around him, neighbors began to gather, some whispering words of encouragement, others they placed comforting hands on his shoulder. Knowing Max too well, he knew his gentle nature and loyalty. The entire community held their breath in anticipation, praying, as each moment stretched into what felt like an eternity. Minutes dragged by, one heavier than the last. The firefighters vanished into the house, their outlines barely distinguishable through the smoke as they searched for any signs of life. Jack's heart was torn, in a painful mix of gratitude over Max's loyalty and fear that he might have sacrificed himself. Just when despair started to settle in, one of the then firefighters emerged, and in his arms was a figure covered in soot but unmistakably Max. And he wasn't alone. The crowd actually gasped as they saw Max emerge from the smoke, being cradled carefully in the firefighter's arms. But there was more. Nestled against Max's chest, hidden in his protective embrace, lay several tiny, trembling kittens. Their little bodies were pressed tightly against him, as if they too sensed safety in the haven he offered, even amid the chaos. Obviously, Max hadn't simply risked his life to escape the flames. He had stayed behind. Instinctively driven to protect these vulnerable creatures, the firefighter laid Max on the ground gently, and Jack rushed to him, falling down on his knees beside his faithful companion. The fur was singed, and he was coughing softly, but his eyes were still those of unshakable loyalty. Jack's voice shook, whispering words of gratitude as he stroked Max's head. But what really hit him full strength was what Max had done. An act not just of loyalty towards his family, but a heroic step of compassion beyond anything they might have envisioned. Emily knelt down, her little hand reaching out to touch Max softly. Her face was a mingle of awe and love as she whispered, "Thank you, Max," her words full of sincerity and depth that belied her young age. She stooped down to plant a soft kiss on his head, and for the moment it seemed the world had stopped moving around them. Neighbors were wiping away tears, and even the firemen, who had witnessed the worst and best of humankind, looked distinctly moved. Even the kittens seemed to fathom the magnitude of the heroism just performed by Max. They cuddled close to him, still scared, but seeming to feel a sense of safety. Max, so tired and hurt, slowly turned his head to lick one of the kittens as if to reassure them everything would be all right. And in that one gentle gesture, everyone standing in the yard saw the depth of her heroism and selflessness to which animals are capable, a reminder of the pure, unconditional love they bring into our lives. As the firefighters worked on the last flames they could find, the community began gathering around Max, a circle around him to protect him. In the kittens he had saved, word of his heroism spread quickly among the onlookers, with neighbors whispering in amazement, sharing stories of how they'd always known Max was special, but never realized the depth of his bravery. One by one, they approached the Thompson family, offering them blankets and water and words of comfort. Their respect for Max was evident in the quiet gestures. The firefighters, visibly moved by what they had just witnessed, approached Jack and Emily with admiration in their eyes. One of them, an old firefighter who had seen countless rescues, knelt beside Max and shook his head, almost in disbelief. "In all my years, I've never seen anything like this," he said softly. "This dog, he didn't just save himself, he saved lives. I think you have a real hero here." Jack's heart swelled with pride and gratitude. He reached out to shake the firefighter's hand, his voice filled with emotion. "Thank you," he murmured, his eyes glancing down at Max, who was now surrounded by gentle hands and kind words from the crowd. Max was exhausted, his breathing shallow, but there was a sense of peace in his eyes, as if he knew he had done something extraordinarily special. Emily sat beside Max, her little hands lightly running over his fur. She whispered into his ear words of love and gratitude, as if attempting to express everything that her young heart felt, but could not quite frame in words for herself. Her bond with Max had always been strong, but from night, It was as if they were connected in a way beyond the realm of words, a silent understanding between a child and her protector that would forever leave them bonded by the bravery he displayed. The night, that which had begun with terror and uncertainty, now felt transformed. It was no longer just a tale of survival, but the tale of courage, of love, of sacrifice. Silently, in that silent moment surrounded by friends and strangers alike, the Thompson family realized that Max's heroism had not only saved lives, but reminded them all of the power of compassion and the extraordinary bravery that even the smallest, most vulnerable life can inspire. In the days to come, the story of Max spread throughout the town, capturing the hearts of all who had heard it in the news, his heroism beyond their neighborhood, with local newspapers and online stories singing about the heroic dog that had given his life for others. People from everywhere came by to pay their respects and support, bringing in treats for Max and small donations to help with any medical needs he might require. Max became an inspiration, a living testament to the quiet heroism that animals can embody. Jack and Emily made sure Max received the best care, tended to his wounds, and gave him plenty of rest. They were by his side, through all the moments of recovery, showering him with love and affection. Even the kittens became an unplanned, yet dearly loved part of the family, often curling beside Max as if they sensed he was their savior. Emily named each of them, every night sitting by Max, and the kittens telling them stories in a voice now full of a new appreciation for the strength and courage she had just been witness to. Neighbors who once passed by giving but a wave now to ask about Max, wanting to hear first-hand accounts of the incredible night. Many of them came with their dogs, and when Max plays with the animals, an unspoken bond was made within the community. The yard of the Thompson family became a gathering place, a place wherein people came to share thankings in their respective stories of pets that touched their lives. One evening, as the sun was dipping into the horizon, Jack sat on the porch with Max, gazing out at the sky's warm glow. He leaned over and stroked the head of his pet, filled with thanks and praise. "I don't think we could ever thank you enough, boy," Jack said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "You've shown us what love and loyalty are all about." Max looked up at him, his eyes calm and wise, as if he understood every word. In those quiet moments of recovery and reflection, the Thompson family began to feel that they had not only acquired a hero, but had recaptured a deeper sense of connection with each other and the community. Max had reminded them that sometimes it's the smallest acts of bravery and compassion that can leave the greatest marks. As Max continued to heal, the Thompsons found but challenging the greater impact their actions had was Jack could very often be found sitting in quiet, contemplative musing, marveling at what courage Max had shown him. He couldn't shake the picture of Max disappearing into the flames, driven by a force beyond simple loyalty. This wasn't just an instinct of a pet. This was pure selfless bravery. Jack wondered how many people would do the same in Max's place, risking everything for lives they barely knew. The family's conversations often turned to Max's heroism. Emily, with the innocence of a child, would ask questions that only served to make them appreciate their father more. "Daddy, do you think Max knew he was going to save the kittens?" she asked one evening. Jack paused, thinking before he spoke. "I think he did, sweetheart. Max has always taken care of us. I think he felt it was his responsibility, just like he does with you." Max had turned from being a family pet into a symbol and representation of protection and love, an example of the kind power that existed between species. Jack found himself talking about Max's heroic acts with friends and colleagues, noticing how each retelling resonated in a deep way. People began to look at Max as a symbol of the good things in life, a source of hope and courage during tough times. The local firefighters who had been part of the rescue that night stopped by, often sharing their own stories of courage and sacrifice. One firefighter, moved deeply, confided to Jack that he had been suffering under the weight of his work with all the lives he had tried to save. "But couldn't Max reminded me why I do this," he said with a thankful smile. "He showed me that every life is worth fighting for, no matter how small." In those moments of shared reflection, the Thompson family realized that Max's actions had created a ripple effect. He had not only saved lives, but had also inspired a renewed sense of hope and purpose within those around him. Max's heroism was more than a single courageous act. It was a reminder of the profound impact that compassion and courage can have, touching lives in ways they hadn't imagined. As time passed, the bond between Max and his family grew deeper. The kittens, once timid and clinging to Max for protection, had blossomed into playful, curious companions, always by his side. Emily adored them, often laughing, as they pounced around her in the yard with Max, watching over them like a gentle guardian. The family had decided to keep the kittens feeling that they too were now part of the legacy of that unforgettable night. The entire community rallied around Max, organizing a small ceremony in his honor. It wasn't grand, but it was heartfelt, with neighbors gathering in the park to celebrate his heroism. Children brought homemade signs, with hand-drawn pictures of Max strewn with hearts and tiny little flames to express how immensely brave he was. A few local dignitaries in the gathering awarded Max a Hero Dog Medal to symbolize the gratitude that everyone felt who had either viewed or heard about his heroic action. Jack and Emily stood by Max's side proudly as he was decorated with his medal. The audience applauded, their loud cheers laced with genuine admiration and respect for the Thompsons. It was a humbling moment. They looked at Max, who sat calmly and with dignity, as if understanding of the honor, but made no request for any reward. Max just sat by his family's side, scanning the crowd with quiet satisfaction, always guarding, always watchful. As the celebration began to end, people approached the Thompsons with stories of their pets, stories of loyalty and love that reflected the bond they saw between Max and his family. It was a day that would leave an indelible mark on everyone there, a celebration not only of Max's bravery, but also the resilience and loyalty that animals bring into our lives. The simple ceremony became a reminder of how deeply these companions touch our hearts, their love pure and unwavering. The Thompson family left the park that day feeling a profound sense of gratitude, not just for Max's heroic actions, but for the way he had brought the community together, inspiring a sense of unity and appreciation. Max had shown them all that heroes come in many forms, and sometimes they're found in the ones who walk beside us on four paws, their loyalty quiet but unbreakable. That evening, as the family lay there, or rather gathered around in the silence of their home, were Max's family and the kittens he rescued, the warm air was full of a profound peace and love. With her head on Max's side, Emily stroked her hand through his fur, watching the quiet awe fall across Jack's face as he and his wife looked on, the house whole, as if Max's act of bravery hasn't just saved lives but sewed them all together, the bond now stronger than ever. In the dim light, Jack gazed at Max and took in everything that brought him to this. That dog who had once been a playful puppy in their lives grown into a true protector. Max faced danger with unwavering bravery, guided not by expectation or reward, but by love and instinctive, unbreakable loyalty that had brought them through the darkest of nights. It was a reminder that sometimes the greatest acts of heroism don't come from grand gestures, but from the quiet, steady love that stays with us even in our hardest moments. As the kittens curled up beside him, Max gently licked each one, his movements tender, protective. It was as if he knew how much of a difference he had made, not just to his family, but to each and every life he had touched. Jack's chest swelled up with gratitude and pride as he realized that in Max they had found a true friend and a hero who had taught them the strengths of resilience and love. The family story with Max had turned into a beautiful testament about the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. The heroism that Max showed was more than any of them could have dreamed of, leaving a legacy that would continue to thrive in their hearts, and in the hearts of those who heard his story that night. As they sat together, surrounded by love and gratitude, the Thompsons knew that Max had given them a gift, one that would stay with them, reminding them every day of the kind of courage and loyalty that make life truly extraordinary.